click. All right, we are recording.
All right.
Welcome. My name is Hannah Swager. I am manager of internships at the Exchange, Marian University's career office. And today we have a history alumna, Mary Alice Durchholz, formerly at Marian University and currently working as a cataloging and metadata librarian at the Indianapolis Public Library. So welcome, Mary Alice. I appreciate that you've joined us today to share a little bit about your career path and maybe some advice that you might have for students. So to start us off, would you like to tell us a little bit about you and what your time at Marian looked like?
Sure. So I'm currently a librarian and I absolutely love my job. And I didn't really figure that out until I was at Marian that that was going to be, something that I was interested in. But I grew up in Southern Indiana and I was a member of a farming family. So I went to Indianapolis for school and I don't know, I guess like hobbies, I like reading, obviously, taking walks and hikes and doing crochet every once in a while. And I've also been getting into Tai Chi lately. But as far as my time at Marian goes, I actually started whenever it was still Marian College. And so it was still like a pretty small, tight-knit campus. I'm sure it probably really hasn't changed too much, except for there's definitely more buildings on campus. But I definitely really enjoyed my time there. I felt like I got a chance to really know my professors and had a little bit more meaningful classroom experience just because it was kind of small. And even with that, we were still able to explore a lot of different topics. So I ended up majoring in history and I did a poli-sci minor as well as a psychology minor, mostly because poli-sci kind of intertwines with history a lot and I enjoy politics. So that was kind of an obvious choice for me. And then psychology is just more of a side interest that I decided to make into a minor. So, but yeah, so I ended up spending 5 years there because of the scholarship opportunities that I had. So yeah, and I graduated in 2011.
All right, awesome. And I know that you've talked a little bit about your interests and how they related to your studies, but what was it like picking your major and deciding what to study when you were at Marian?
So that was kind of an easy one for me because history was already one of my favorite subjects as I was going through grade school and high school. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew I wanted to study it. And so I kind of just took a leap of faith and just started there. And I was kind of hoping something would, you know, present itself and then I would kind of figure it out. And luckily it did. So I feel like that was probably kind of a really easy answer, but I did find like over my years at Marian, I would study a lot in the library, and it was just kind of a big hub for people, passing through, like, either going to the bookstore or, just visiting friends who were studying in there. And just over time, I got to talk with the librarians there, and it was getting a little bit closer to my senior year, and I'm like, wait a second, these guys actually work here. This could be a job. I already like to be here. I don't know what all they do, but yeah, I'll figure it out. So I started doing a little bit of research and I found out that IUPUI had a library school in their graduate program. And so I was like, well, I don't even have to leave Indy for that. So I decided to make that leap.
That's awesome. Was there any other paths that you considered, like, or anything you'd like to say about the discernment process? Because I feel like with all liberal arts majors, everybody's like, so history, what are you going to do with that? Or in my
Mhm.
case, like English, what do you want to teach? Anyway, that's always what they
Right.
said. So like,
Yeah.
I just want to speak to, like, can you speak a little bit to like how history like has informed where you are in your career, I guess?
Sure. So it only kind of seems like the option for a history major is like, well, are you going to be a history teacher or a professor? And the more that I got into it, it was, I enjoyed reading history and doing a little bit of historical research, but it wasn't, something that I was really passionate about. And I'm also an introvert. So the idea of having, a room full of kids and lecturing to them for most of the day did not really seem like an appealing prospect. So
Same.
yeah. So yeah, it was just basically the first few years at Marian, I was just, focused on just learning and going through my degree program and just kind of being open to anything else that might pop up because like no matter what, like liberal arts, it teaches you critical thinking skills and you can apply that to pretty much any job that or career that you want to. And so I was just kind of focused on, developing that part and hoping that other things would work out. So I guess I left a lot up to fate.
Yeah.
That
Well, and
way.
like I think that that's so commonly how it ends up, like 100%. You're developing the skills and the thinking skills and the learning skills so that you can pick up anything that kind of interests you.
Mhm.
And I think our liberal arts students are often interested in so many different things. We just end up doing very, very diverse work after
Right,
graduation.
right.
Speaking of work after graduation, you already shared that you went on to a master's program in library science. Can you talk about like what your steps were after that? Like, what has your career path looked like since grad school?
Sure. Yeah. I ended up doing 3 years of my program, but you can finish it within 2 years if you'd like, depending on which graduate program you do go to. But it wasn't really like, I think I was probably about a year into my program when I took a cataloging class, which cataloging involves the bibliographic description of library materials. So basically, in layman's terms, if you're looking up a book in the library catalog and you pull open this web page of like all the information about a single book, that information is put in by catalogers. And in a way, the backside of putting that information into the catalog, it's kind of like coding. So it was kind of fun to learn, even though we were always warned it's like, you're probably not going to like this. It's just a it's just a prerequisite. Catalogers are kind of, a rare breed in
I love
librarians.
it when people say that about something
Yeah,
that I love. They're like, "Oh, you're probably not gonna like this."
right.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
but I was like, compared to other aspects of library work, there, and we'll probably get into this in a little while, but like those, possible career paths didn't really, they seemed a lot more open-ended, whereas this, like, it was kind of like you have to learn all of the rules and how to put things in correctly. And then it's like once you do that, you can kind of bend them when you need to. So I just kind of fell in love with that. And um, like after that, I think it was that next summer, I had decided to go for an extra year to, try to get in more actual experience working in libraries. But there was a cataloging internship at Greenwood Public Library for that summer. Because I think they had just raised their materials budget. And so they were going to be getting a lot of new, um, books and CDs and audiobooks and movies that they hadn't had in a long time. So they needed extra help. And so I was able to continue practicing what I'd learned in my cataloging class. And I made a few connections at that library and I got a really good experience out of that. And I do want to say also, like during this time, I had two different circulation positions at two different libraries. And circulation is when like you're actually at the desk checking books in and out for people. And so I worked at IUPUI's University Library as a circulation clerk. And then I also was a substitute clerk with the Indianapolis Public Library. And that really gave me good experience with customer service, although it was nicer because we weren't really selling anything. You just had to help people with, books that they had checked out and other things that were going on with their account. And I met a lot of great people, and it was a really good experience in both libraries. Um, so it was definitely a good time to like get the experience of opening up and meeting new people and networking and just getting familiar with this new career path that I wanted to do and how, things were functioning. And so luckily, the way the timing worked out, it was kind of nice. I was graduating at I think April 2014, May 2014. And there was an opening for a part-time technical services librarian, which that's also like another term for cataloging, with a library just east of Indianapolis. And so I was able to take that job after graduating, and then I kept another small part-time job at IUPUI's campus while I was still able to catalog. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And then early 2016, the job with Marion, or the Indianapolis Public Library, opened up, and I applied and I was accepted. So I've been there ever since.
That's awesome. Can you give us a picture of like day to day what it looks like being a librarian in this role? Like, what's your typical day look like?
Sure. So being in cataloging, it's definitely more of a behind the scenes role. So we're definitely not doing like story time or anything out in the public facing branches. So I usually work in our administrative services building, and we're in an area called collection management. So the selection process, the cataloging process, and like the application of all the stickers and barcodes and everything on the books takes place there. And then it's also a central hub for where things go out to the branches. And so it's changed a little bit because of COVID. Of course, everybody's had to make adjustments, but pre-COVID, basically, I worked in a cubicle, and we would have shelves full of books, and they were basically the first copy shelves. And so they would be placed there by somebody in the processing department because they received the books that we've ordered, and they will give us the first copy of each book that they have received. So we're not like inundated with 20 copies of the same book. And I work in a department of about 6 people. So we all kind of do about the same thing. And so, we basically take whatever work we wanted from the first copy shelves, and we'd go back to our desk and we would catalog them one by one. And we would use an online utility called OCLC. And it's basically a large consortium where you can get bib records. So I'd say probably about 85% of our cataloging, it's what we would call copy cataloging. So like think of it as, you're looking for a recipe, and most of the time on the internet, you're going to find what you need without tweaking it or anything. And so we're able to get most of our records that way. Sometimes we'd have to edit it a little bit just to tweak a few pieces of information. But most of the time we're able to find what we need without too much enhancement. Other times we'll have to make a record completely by scratch, and that's called original cataloging. And that can take a little bit of time. So it kind of varies like day to day, like what we'll do, but we also have different projects that we work on. We have what's called the shared system with Indianapolis schools and a few museums, and Riley Hospital just joined us last year. And so we're constantly growing that, but each of us in cataloging are assigned a few schools. And so in addition to regular NDPL cataloging, you catalog for your school. And so it just depends on like the school schedule, like how much of that material will come in. But we did have a few pretty big projects over the last few years, just special collections that we acquired for the library. One was the Chris Gonzalez Library that used to be with Indie Pride. And I think they figured out that they really couldn't hold that collection. And so most of that came to Indianapolis Public Library, although some of their more artistic material went to the IMA. So we were working on that probably from like 2018 to 2019. And we did a little bit of like catch up work last year during COVID, but I think most of that collection is in now. And then also we just went through a pretty big catalog migration, which we completely switched the catalog platform that we were using. And that went live in January of 2020. And so we were
Congrats.
still.
That must be a
Yeah.
huge project. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. It was basically we kind of had to relearn how to do all of the stuff that we do. And we were only able to like really do a lot of learning before, like probably for a few months before it went live. And so it was kind of during COVID and the lockdown where we were actually like, it was kind of a blessing because we had a little bit of downtime. It's like, okay, we can actually like focus on, you know, how we can like make sure we're doing everything properly, and that everything is still showing up in the catalog as it should. And so like during that time, we moved to working from home for at least like 4 days out of 5. And we were able to come up with a way for processors to send us batches of books and other materials just through our new catalog system instead of us having to like physically go and pick up books to catalog. We still brought some things home with us, and we still worked on a few things in person that we needed to have eyes on. But like just because we moved to this new catalog system right before, we were able to like really adjust our workflow during COVID, like much better than we would our old system. So that was kind of a crazy fun thing to work on.
Yeah, it's practicing those like adaptability and critical thinking
Mhm.
skills as a liberal arts major for sure. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
definitely.
Awesome. Can you this next question is like a two-part question.
Mhm.
So, I wanted to know what the greatest challenge is in your job day to day, but also what is your favorite part of the position as well?
Sure. Yeah, so the greatest challenge, I think definitely right now, it's been a little hard adjusting to not being with my coworkers in the office, because if any of us had a question, all we had to do was just pop over to someone else's desk, and then we could have like an informal meeting about, you know, the problem that we're facing. So that's been one challenge that we've had to work on. We also do a lot of work with vendors. So we'll have some vendors who will pre-catalog some things for us, and we just have to do a little bit of tweaking, and then we'll import the records that they give us for like a lot of high demand materials. And some of them are easier to work with than others. And so we've had to come up with a lot of different ways to solve problems as they arise, because I think a lot of the issues that we see could probably be resolved, but it lies in the selection department, which is completely separate from cataloging. So like that's kind of a constant challenge that we always have to face. But basically, other than that, I love everything else about it. I really like the fact that it's behind the scenes, so I can just, you know, lose myself in my work. And most of the time, it's just really fun, critical thinking and problem solving. And it almost really doesn't feel like work, just because, I can go into, a new record set and see like what we're going to be getting at the library. And so it's really fun to see the new materials that we're going to be getting. So yeah.
That's awesome to have like the first set of eyes on new materials.
Mhm.
Like, oh, that's got to be fun, but also overwhelming. Like all of the
Just
material, like I'd want to read everything.
I know. And it's like, I know I only see like a portion of it just because we've got other people who are cataloging. So I mean, it's probably good because I know like early on in my career, like I could easily get sidetracked and just be like, skimming through, some of the things that I'd be cataloging. And then it's like, oh, I probably could have been done with this a few minutes ago. So
I
yeah,
love
it's
that. But
it's
you get
definitely
like
a
a
fun
little
perk.
sneak peek, like, oh, do I want to sample this? Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Or it's like, oh, I'm gonna put this on hold. This will be
Yep.
nice.
I
Yeah.
love that. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Anyway, it's such great like detail work. If you for anyone who finds like very detail work like
Definitely.
therapeutic, there's like a real comfort to that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because we definitely have certain parameters that we need to follow. Like you need to take into account like how a title is formed. So it's like if a title starts with the, you have to code it so like the doesn't show up in, a title search or a keyword search. And you have to watch your punctuation and your spelling. And basically you just need to make sure that you've got all of the pertinent bits of information so that whatever patron is looking to find this on the library catalog, they'll be able to find it. So like that basically should be our utmost concern, is like, okay, what can we do to make sure, our library users can find the information and the materials that they need.
Oh,
So it's very much detail oriented.
yes. And it's so important because you don't think about it. You're just searching for something, but there's so much work that goes in behind the scenes to make to get that book in front of the right eyes that of people who are looking for that. So that's awesome. Um,
Mhm.
all right, my next question is what are some of the highlights of your career so far, or any achievements you're really proud of that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Oh, sure. So I kind of already mentioned our catalog migration. So I kind of think that's probably one of the top points in my career, just because like that was such a weird, difficult, and interesting place to be. Because like, anytime you work in libraries, you're probably going to go through at least one or two catalog migrations during your career, just no matter what library you're in, just because technology changes and so catalogs have to change too. But also, like, there's kind of a few nerdy things that I really like about the job. So we have in cataloging what's known as authority records, and these apply to like author names, different authorized subject headings. So basically, it's like we have controlled vocabulary, so we can use, specified terms in catalog records so that, people can link those and try to find, other works by the same author, works in the same series, or works about the same subject a little bit easier. And I guess like the easiest way to think of it is hashtags. That would be like kind of the modern iteration of it. But I remember I was working on a collection for our special collections room down at Central Library, for the poet Maury Evans. And I had noticed that the date for her birth date in the Library of Congress subject heading, or her authority record, was incorrect, just because this was like I was cataloging a collection about her life, and it was just after she had passed. And I noticed in one of the Indianapolis Star articles that like her grandson had said, well, she always told people that she was younger than when she really was, and she was born in this year instead. And so I was able to send in an error report to the Library of Congress and give documentations like, you need to update her record because her birth year is wrong. And they did it.
Hey, that's
So
awesome. Is that like
yeah,
a real process? That is so
yeah,
interesting.
it is. There's you can actually become part of like national consortiums to contribute new authority records to the Library of Congress. So like we've been in like talking about doing this at our library for a while, but then you know we've had the migration, and then COVID has kind of pushed things back. But like if you notice errors, you can still in like requests for them to update something. So it, like I actually had to take a screenshot and I showed my boss. I was like, hey, I had to do this today.
That
So
is
it,
awesome.
yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing everything today about your career path. So, I wanted to ask one final question. What career advice would you give to students who are watching and who are really interested in pursuing more information or a potential career path in library science?
Sure. I would say it's, depending on your interests, it might be a difficult field to get into, just because libraries are kind of at the mercy of how they're funded. But there are a lot of different areas where you could go into librarianship. Like IT is always, a much needed part of libraries. So, if you're thinking like you're a little bit more computer science oriented, but then, if libraries have been an important part of your life and you kind of would rather do that versus a corporate job, that might be something to consider. But there are, academic libraries like Marion's Library. They exist to help perpetuate research at the university and post-secondary level, both for students and for teachers. So that's always an option. There are government libraries, you know, from, the Library of Congress to, the various branches of military to all of the different departments. There's plenty of opportunities there. Hospitals have libraries, like medical libraries are a big thing. Music libraries are still like, pretty specialized. I think most of them would be attached to universities, but there are a lot of other, like, there's even corporate libraries out there. So like any you know, companies that have anything to do with the sciences, they probably have libraries. Disney has its own archives, and just different companies like that, entertainment companies that would have a reason to archive a lot of their works throughout the years to preserve history. So it's definitely a pretty wide field, but I would suggest just starting off looking at your local library, talking to the librarians there, volunteering, just to get a sense of, what they like about libraries. You might get a bit of a narrow view if, since, public libraries are, a really good career path, but then it's definitely a role of service. So if you're, looking to make a good living out of it, that might just be like a stepping stone to doing something different. But it's just, talk to as many librarians as you can, do a lot of research. You can even, cold call or, just email people out of the blue and just be like, hey, I'm kind of interested in libraries and I saw how you have this job, can you tell me a little bit more about it if you have the time? So it's, I don't know, if you definitely approach it with, just a little bit of a love of curiosity, I think you'll, be able to find the information that you need.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, like going out and talking to people or like even
Mhm.
reaching out via email to people you don't know. Like I was
Right.
so shy about that because I'm
Yes, me
also a
too.
hardcore introvert.
Mhm.
But what I've found is like, I don't know, with everybody I've known who's worked in a library, most of them are more introverted, but like they're so passionate about what you guys do. And
Mhm.
once you actually like open that door,
Yeah.
they're just so happy to share like the service that they provide to the
Mhm.
community and they care about it. So
Yeah.
I've I appreciate that about library, like the industry. Um,
Right. Well,
because
and
yeah.
also there's plenty of extroverts in libraries too. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
you can definitely find roles for introverts, or, if you want to be that loud children's librarian with like pink or blue hair, you know,
Well, there's
you can
so
be
much
that.
work to do within the community, yeah,
Yeah.
and programming and things like that, especially children's librarian. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, for
programming that
sure.
goes into that. It's a lot, and like people are so passionate about it because, as you said, they're not necessarily in it to get rich, but
Right.
they love what they do and they want to share that with other people. So if students are interested, I think that that's really the best way to learn more about the field, but then
Mhm.
also to be the first person to hear about it when there's an opening because you've already made those contacts. So
Right. Right.
anyway,
True.
I think that
Mhm.
that's awesome. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or anything?
No, I just, if you're really interested, just go talk to people and do some research. And if you don't know how to do the research, the library is the perfect place to find out.
It is. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I think that like all that you've shared today is going to be so beneficial for students who are discerning and considering library science. So thank you so much, Mary Alice. And
Thank you.
I just thanks for sharing.
All right. Thanks and good luck, to all you students who are trying to figure out what to do with your life. It's not an easy thing, but everybody's got to do it.
Yep.